Honorable ABU JINAPOR, one of the JINAPOR brothers, in Parliament, I make a bold statement. Be said, President Mahama has formed the biggest government in the history of Ghana. And didn't know kasa dofunum ebiana ohu video e nemum no koso na hwe because ye babe break it down appointments Mahama aye suggest say even though wakase or che ministers Ekufuado fire no chem che say ministers or dem be adwuma no mpo de endu Ekufuado de mu half mpo nemum no hwe mu appointments waye no ekamia yesanka ofa minister said the Ekufuado fire no mpo anka ebefa ne sa yenko na yenko tie ABU JINAPOR na yenko so na yen break it down nsema okeka no yenko na yenko tie no.
Then Mahama has formed arguably one of the biggest or largest governments in the history of our country as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer. Why do I say this? Check for example.
Now Obabe Chichim, Babi breaking it down. Actually, the entire ono suggest to say President Mahama has formed one of the biggest, and I say the biggest government in the history of our country, Ghana.
Example, the president has appointed Dr. Valerie Sawyer as senior presidential advisor in charge of government affairs. Her rank is a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament. So her salary, her emolument, conditions of service, everything to do with her office is at the same rank as a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament. He's appointed a presidential advisor on economy, appointed presidential advisor for 24-hour economy, presidential advisor in special aid to the president, presidential advisor on national anti-corruption program, presidential advisor on diaspora affairs. Mr. Speaker, he goes on to appoint presidential advisor, presidential staffer, and special aid to the vice president, presidential staffer for Black Star Experience, and then presidential staffer for diaspora affairs. Mr. Speaker, then he goes ahead to appoint 5 policy advisors to the vice president.
What? Mama say nyadia obefa ministers bebre eti said the Ekufuado file nemumu he has been able to appoint 5 presidential staffers as advisor and also as advisors to the vice president just on policies. Appointed 5 staffers to advise the vice president only on policy making. Wow.
Speaker, he tells the country that he's appointed a minister in charge of agribusiness. And yet he's appointed director at the presidency in charge of agriculture and agribusiness. My good friend Peter Buama Otukono. The Speaker, he says he will not appoint deputy regional ministers, and he appoints 16 presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions of our.
What's the regional ministers now are formed 16 nya dia obemo deputies nemumu you have appointed 16 presidential staffers in charge of these 16 regions. So indirectly deputy ministers of these 16 regions no one away yomun because ejumombe no is just equivalent to appointing them as deputy regional ministers. Nemum nedino na onye nesa na form as presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions. 16 presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions who are going to work under the regional ministers. In short, no, they are all deputy regional ministers.
Country. Mr. Speaker, I want to submit that these presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions of our country, in essence, as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer, are in fact, indeed, and in substance, deputy ministers of state.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, he then appoints, Mr. Speaker, listen carefully, please. Mr. Speaker, he then appoints one presidential advisor on media, 4 directors of communication at the office of the president, 5 deputy
appointments under the communication under the communication ministry. So then your appointment a share communication as senkwa there
directors of communication, 2 communication specialists, 5 technical communication assistants, 1 media aide, 1 assistant media liaison officer, 1 communications consultant. That's because I've done the mathematics and I want to submit. That's because I've done the mathematics that I want to submit, and I do this not from a partisan lens, but I do this as somebody who had the privilege and honor to serve as Deputy Chief of Staff. I know how it works. In terms of the cost on the national exchequer, the president has appointed 100 ministers and deputy ministers. That's because the president has established a
Okasa as Deputy Chief of Staff, our survey under Akufo-Addo government. Say, so show more appointments are no. Say the way 100 ministers and then your deputy ministers of state. Just that a dini keke na one fan to so. And so yeah no enwa ana we yomo.
Ministry of Youth Development. Because I want to refer the House and my good friend Honorable, I will tender all of this, Mr. Speaker. I will tender this. I will tender this. I will tender it. Mr. Speaker, but Mr. Speaker, the Honorable James Agalga, my very good friend, has talked about how the MPP government terminated some appointments. Mr. Speaker, assuming without admitting that that even happened, shouldn't our governance move forward? Shouldn't we have good governance? And indeed, when we promise resetting, what does that mean? But Mr. Speaker, more importantly, may I refer the House, Mr. Speaker, may I refer the House to Article 191 of our national constitution, which states, and I quote, a member of the public services shall not be dismissed or removed from office or reduced in rank or otherwise punished without just cause, end quotes. Mr. Speaker, we are building a nation and there are hundreds and thousands of people out there who have lost their jobs. I think our friends from the other side, the Honorable James Agaga, should join us to appeal to the president, just as he took an oath, Mr. Speaker, on the 2nd schedule of our national constitution, where he said, and I quote, to protect and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, end quote. Article 191 is a provision of the Constitution of Ghana, and the president is enjoined to indeed defend and protect this provision of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the president, in the same schedule, swore an oath to do justice to all manner of persons. Some of these people whose appointments have been terminated, some are NDC members, Mr. Speaker. Some are MPP members. Some are non-partisan. Some don't even know what happens in politics. And yet, a president who says he'll be father for all has terminated the appointment. When President Mahama was leaving office, Mr. Speaker, he appointed Mr. Joseph Whittle as the commissioner for Shraj. He appointed Joseph Nkrumah as chairman of NCCE. On 23rd December 2016, he appointed Daniel Domevilo as Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, it is not Abu Jinapor,
member conclude.
Or it is not the minority. It's not the minority, Mr. Speaker, who is giving the president names. No, Mr. Speaker, when you go out there on the street, it's the Ghanaian youth who are talking about that. That the president promised to create jobs, and yet he's come, and the talk on the street is that Mahama Bako terminations, baby. Mr. Speaker, and that is why they have named him. We haven't named him. The minority hasn't named him. They have named him Terminator #1. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we call on the president to rise up to the occasion, to jettison the promises, and Mr. Speaker, and honor his commitments of providing you for the Ghanaian people. What we heard on 27th was a message of lamentations and not a State of the Nation address. That we thank you for the attention.
ABU JINAPOR akasa. ABU JINAPOR akasa. Na from appointments a Mahama ayeno ebesi terminations a asanso ayete se o kan bi shemu no yi bi free ama sisi Ghana youth ato Mahama din se terminator 1 so on there Mahama bako terminations bebre amwa no pam nkrofo free omedumem adofunum comment a wo bia fato comment section hono mai ade ABU JINAPOR eka no so hwena se ono an okeka bi shemu asanya no kre na odina tro no so show hono mame na besan so shabium in our next video. Akram.